Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. Let me introduce the people who are here today. To my far left is Hilda Escher from the Ibero-American Action League, which is based out of Rochester. To my immediate left is Robert Mejica, who's the Budget Director of the State of New York. To my right, Assemblymember Marcus Crespo, who has been very active in the Puerto Rico recovery effort and coordinating the state's recovery. Borough President Ruben Diaz, who is the Borough President of El Bronx, who has been also very active in coordinating the New York response for Puerto Rico. Obviously, the Bronx is a very large Puerto Rican population. And to his right, Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, Executive Director of Catholic Charities. We were all together yesterday in Puerto Rico for 2 days, and we want to talk to you about a follow-up on that trip and what we saw, and then I'll have a separate statement on speed cameras. Believe it or not, it was last September that Hurricane Irma and Maria devastated Puerto Rico. It's been 10 months. 472,000 homes were destroyed. It was the largest natural disaster that Puerto Rico had faced. It was a catastrophic loss of the power grid, and the recovery was very, very slow right from the beginning. Forget anything in anticipation. The recovery itself was very slow. I said at that time the situation in Puerto Rico was devastating and that the way it had been handled was an embarrassment for the nation. Marcos Crespo, you even looked younger 10 months ago. I don't know what happened. And I were on the first plane down to Puerto Rico after the hurricane to see firsthand what was going on. We were joined by Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. 3 weeks later, President Trump made his way to Puerto Rico, and that's where he famously tossed the paper towels. Many of us, including myself, were saying at that time that the United States response was abysmal.
We've done a great job in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has to get the infrastructure going. We're helping them with their infrastructure.
The president believed the U.S. was doing a great job.
Very thankful.
Well, I want to thank you. Great job, Brock. Really fantastic. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate the job you've done. It's been amazing, and you really have kept quite busy.
All right. The president says the job they did in Puerto Rico was fantastic and amazing. Now, we know the truth, and the truth is documented. The federal government itself, FEMA, does an after-action report, what they call an after-action report, a report on how FEMA did in Puerto Rico. Their own report says that FEMA did a terrible job in Puerto Rico. Quotes such as, FEMA entered the hurricane season with a force strength less than its target, so they had staff shortages. The FEMA leadership acknowledged that the agency could have better anticipated the severity of the hurricanes and the damage to the infrastructure. Because FEMA and its partners lacked situational awareness, which means because they didn't know where they were. That's the interpretation of situational awareness. The agency initially could not be certain that FEMA and the partners' efforts were sufficient to stabilize the incident, okay? This is their own federal report. This is not a Democratic report. This is not, there's no politics to this. This is their own agency's report. The leadership also recognized that emergency managers at all levels could have leveraged existing information to proactively plan for challenges before and after the hurricanes. Now, this is all federal speak, right? They could have better leveraged existing information. That means they could have talked to people and found out what was really going on. That's what that is trying to say. Now that the federal government has acknowledged its failure, and now that we know the president was wrong, and maybe either misinformed about the federal response, but now that we know the FEMA response was a contributing factor to the situation in Puerto Rico and compounded the natural disaster, we want the federal government to do the right thing and provide the aid and the resources that Puerto Rico needs. New York, we've taken the exact opposite tact. We were very aggressive from day one. We were very aggressive in the emergency phase. We sent down 1,000 personnel. We sent down 4,400 pallets of donated goods from all across the state. Borough president and assembly member did a great job in doing that, but donated goods from all across the state. We then have gone to step two, phase two, which is an actual recovery effort and rebuilding effort where we have a partnership with community groups, SUNY CUNY students who are going down and rebuilding. Just to give you an idea of what we saw yesterday, and we were throughout a good part of the island over the past 2 days. So we saw areas around San Juan, the coast, but also the central mountain area. This is yesterday. And this is the damage yesterday. So you can see 10 months later, the damage is significant and it is everywhere. People are still shoveling mud out of their homes. Today, they're still shoveling mud out of their homes 10 days later. You still have garbage piled up on the side of the road. I mean, this could have looked like a condition that happened 2 weeks before. That's the way much of the island still looks. Now, there's always a duality. The richer people, the richer communities had the resources to do the reconstruction themselves. It's always the poorer people and the poorer communities that are the last to recover, right? Because they are the ones without the resources. But this is Puerto Rico today, 10 months later. So 10 months later, we still haven't even met the basic needs. What our people are doing is basic repairs. They are fixing rooftops because the rooftops were blown away and the rooftops are leaking. So they're literally, 10 months later, still doing very basic repairs of keeping water out of the home. We're not talking about new resiliency, new infrastructure, new power grid, new green projects. 10 months later, please help me fix my roof so the water doesn't come in. 10 months later, please take down the blue tarp so I can actually have a roof on my home. That's where we are in Puerto Rico 10 months later. Literally, sheet metal roofs that were blown away that 10 months later have yet to be replaced. And these are not highly complicated construction situations. These are sheet metal roofs. That's all these are. That's what our people are there doing. That's what the federal government hasn't done for the past 10 months. Next, for New York, we're going to provide more rebuilding assistance. We're going to provide economic help, including joint efforts on the agricultural sector side. About 80% of their agricultural sector economy was destroyed. We're going to be sending down a team to work with them to develop joint economic initiatives on the agriculture side, also spur tourism. We're showing you pictures of poorer communities, poorer places. The hotels are open, they're ready. I encourage New Yorkers to vacation in Puerto Rico. They need the help, they need the economy. We are also faced with a situation where many people left the island in the aftermath of the storm. We have about 11,000 Puerto Ricans in New York who just came from the island after the storm. And now they're here and they're in New York and they need help. And today we announce $2 million in additional aid to provide case management services for those families. These are families that literally had to run out of the home. It was in the aftermath of the storm. Everything they had was lost. They came to New York with sometimes only the shirts on their back. So our obligation as New Yorkers is to welcome them to New York and help them in their situation. We've been doing that. But today we announced another $2 million in aid to do that, and we'll have more information on that in a moment. And our other responsibility as New Yorkers is to demand federal responsiveness from the federal government. The federal government has now admitted what they refused to admit. They were either negligent or incompetent or uncaring. Maybe they just didn't give a darn. But whatever the motivation, whatever the reason, they compounded the damage and the harm that happened in Puerto Rico. Remember the scope. Hurricane Katrina, which was a national disaster, 1,800 lives lost. In Puerto Rico, 4,500 lives lost. Katrina, 1,800. Puerto Rico, 4,500. What's the difference between New Orleans and Puerto Rico? Nothing. They are both American citizens, and they should have been treated the same. Puerto Ricans are not second-class American citizens. There are no second-class American citizens. And Puerto Rico was treated like second-class American citizens. And that treatment is continuing. You have a federal report that damns the actions of the federal government. You have a federal report that says the President of the United States lied when he said everything was amazing and everything was fantastic. At least now do the appropriate and responsible action, which is at least now give Puerto Rico the help they need. They've requested $94 billion in recovery aid. They've only received a $5 billion loan. Provide Puerto Rico with the aid and the assistance. You still have people without roofs on their homes 10 months later, and you admitted you were part of the problem. At least now step up and act responsibly. I will say today what I said on the first visit. The situation in Puerto Rico is devastating, and the way it has been handled is an embarrassment for this nation. I said that on the first trip. I'm saying it on the last trip. 10 months, nothing has changed. Let me make a statement on another topic, and then we'll take questions. Then we'll turn it over to my colleagues. The speed camera bill, the speed cameras expire today. Speed cameras were authorized by state legislation. They provide extra safety in school zones to stop vehicles from speeding. They have been proven to be highly effective. They have been proven to save lives. Many families have lost loved ones, and the speed cameras were a reform that was put in place after the loss of life. At least learn and change and grow, and that's what the speed cameras are. We've been debating this issue in Albany for months. The Senate Republicans are opposed to speed cameras. They have allowed them to expire. You allow the speed camera law to expire, you are putting lives in jeopardy. It is that simple. When the law expires, the speed cameras go away. The speed cameras go away, you will see speeding and recklessness increase. And you will put lives in jeopardy. They refused to extend the speed cameras for months and months and months in Albany. Or they wanted some backroom deal, trade for yeshivas, something. They oppose speed cameras. And they have their own argument that the drivers don't like speed cameras. I understand drivers don't like speeding tickets. I didn't like speeding tickets. Here's my advice for a driver who doesn't want a speeding ticket. Don't speed. It's very simple. Don't speed. But for them not to renew the speed camera law puts lives in jeopardy. Now, they don't want to admit that they're against it, so they come up with an excuses and point fingers. We should have a special session. You don't need a special session. You don't need a lightning bolt from heaven. You don't need divine intervention. You don't have to do a novena. The bill is on their desk. The assembly passed it. Just go back to Albany and pass the bill you refused to pass. The assembly passed the bill. I sent up a bill. They have the bill. They don't want to pass it. They don't want to pass it. I'd have more respect for them if they just said, I refuse to pass the bill. Senator Golden says, well, I'm going to call Senator Flanagan. They are part of the same conference. It is the Republican conference. If Senator Golden wanted to pass the bill, you know what would happen? Senator Golden would pass the bill because it is about his district. Senator Flanagan is in Suffolk County. This doesn't affect Senator Flanagan. It's all about Senator Golden. There's no need for the Assembly to do anything. They pass the bill. There's no need for me to do anything but sign the bill once they pass it, and I will sign it within 15 minutes of their passing it. They have to pass the bill. And they don't want to pass the bill. And they don't want to say that. But that's what it is. With that, let me turn it over to Marcos Crespo. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Afternoon. First of all, this is not the first time we come together to talk about Puerto Rico. And I got to just start off by saying that as someone who was born in the island, whose mother still resides there and was one of the people who had to confront the challenges of the storm, I got to tell you, it has been one of the most honorable things that I've been able to participate in as an elected official, to have seen and worked closely with the governor, to have seen his leadership from day one. Having that first flight, the first flight, not just from New York, the first flight of anywhere to enter Puerto Rico bringing supplies came from the state of New York, came because the governor mobilized resources, supplies, and personnel in order to assist. The same way that when we suffered the Sandy aftermath, People came from Puerto Rico to volunteer, and crews from Puerto Rico came to volunteer in New York's response. But that was not the first time that I had gone to Puerto Rico with the governor. Prior to the storm, we had already been working on the economic crisis. When the governor talks about the lack of resources and the funding that the federal government owes Puerto Rico, we have been making this call prior to Hurricane Maria. And it only now has been exacerbated. And when people ask the question, well, why isn't the government in Puerto Rico doing more to respond? Well, the answer is because they don't have the resources to do so. They didn't have it before the storm. They certainly don't have it now. And the federal government and this president continues to neglect their responsibility, and Congress, to do what they need to do for American citizens living in Puerto Rico. And I got to wonder personally whether or not the fact that we are Latino-speaking residents of an island where we look like the very immigrants this president continues to vilify, if maybe that is why he refuses to respond. He refuses to act or acknowledge his failure. But I'm grateful that in New York we're doing what we can, that we are supporting families on the ground. And when you look at those images, understand what it means to me to work, to be able to go with the governor, with so many leaders, to work closely with the men and women of our labor unions who have been volunteering their time and helping out, to work closely with non-for-profits, and to see the amazing energy and the heart with which those CUNY and SUNY students are going down there to do everything they can. And understand something. Just picture, I don't know where your parents live, but just picture wherever it is they lived. Picture them surviving a massive storm, and picture their home being left without a roof, and sitting there for 10 months waiting for someone, anyone, to show up and help. Well, for many families, for hundreds of families on the island of Puerto Rico, the first faces and the first crews they're seeing are those New York volunteers that the governor made possible to bring us all together to mobilize us there. And it's not just the families in Puerto Rico. There are families that were displaced by this hurricane who are here now. And it is our governor who has made resources available. An announcement was made weeks back by the task force that was put together by the governor. And more of that assistance is coming now to the organizations that are supporting those displaced families throughout the state of New York. And we will continue that work because New York and Puerto Rico have a long history together. Because many of those families and the extended families call New York home. And because if our president fails to act in the best way to represent what our flag and our country stands for, then we will. And this governor has. And the work that he has done, I got to tell you, Governor, as a Puerto Rican, as an elected official, on behalf of my family and the people of Puerto Rico, thank you. Thank you because you remind me every time we talk about this and every time you step up, it reminds me why we are in government. It reminds me about the responsibility we have to serve. And so, look, it's been an amazing effort and more needs to be done. But understand, and my message is to every Puerto Rican in the diaspora, any of the 50 states, to any American who wants to see American citizens being treated as such, without regard for who they are or how they speak or how they look, for everyone who respects the territories and what they've contributed to the creation and the building of our nation, to fighting for our democracy, for every American soldier of Puerto Rican descent who gave the ultimate sacrifice in every one of our major battles and wars. On their behalf, I am imploring everyone to reach out to the congressional officials and demand that more be done and that those resources, even the limited number of resources that have already been approved, be given to Puerto Rico so that they can actually invest in their rebuilding. That hasn't happened. And while other folks are moving on to other topics, our governor, Governor Cuomo, continues to remind not just the state of New York, not just the rest of the nation, but our congressional leaders that they have to do more and that and that it's on them what happens to these families. There are still people's lives in danger. Some we have been able to help. Those families that have new roofs will be in a better position to survive. We're in the middle of another a season. Another storm could hit at any moment. Mother Nature doesn't discriminate. Apparently our president does. And we have to do better. So I'm asking every American who cares and wants to see justice for Puerto Rico to call their congressional leaders, to call the White House, and to mobilize right on through Election Day until respect is given to American citizens, no matter where they are and no matter where they're from. And just one note, Governor, if I'm allowed, on behalf of our Speaker and our members in the Assembly, we too call on the Senate to stop playing games with people's lives, to come back to work. We passed this bill. It is on your desk. And the Republican senators owe it to every New York family, everyone who has already lost a loved one, and every one of us who as parents send our kids to local schools expecting safety for them, at the very least, that they go back and do their job, that they go back and serve our communities, and that they go back and pass the speed camera legislation. With that, I want to introduce someone who has been an inspiration for the work he's done and for the champion and the voice that he's been, not only for Puerto Ricans, for people in the Bronx, and for New Yorkers across our city and state, Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Assembly Member and Chair of the Hispanic Task Force, Marco Crespo, to our Governor. De parte de todos los puertorriqueños, le queremos dar 1,000,000 de gracias a nuestro gobernador. I'm here to report a little bit about what we saw the last 2 days. And what we saw, I have two takeaways. Number one is that we have so many families in Puerto Rico who are still suffering and are hurting. You may not hear about it or read about it in the papers. As you saw in the images that the governor showed earlier, many of them are still living in these conditions, deplorable conditions, as if the hurricane hit a couple of weeks ago. With that said, the other takeaway was that I saw an extraordinary, nothing short of extraordinary coordination of human compassion to all of the trade unions that are out there, the men and women in labor, to our non-for-profits, Catholic Charities, UNICEF, Hearts 9/11. Thank you for this coordinated effort and having especially our youth who are finding themselves participating in something purposeful. For those of us who are a little older, imagine when you were in college, instead of just thinking about how you're going to do on your next exam or your term paper or paying for tuition, think about coupling that with going somewhere and doing something meaningful to the lives of individuals. It's almost comparable to Job Corps, what's happening. And it's real, ladies and gentlemen. To have individuals like Doña Nelly in Orocovis tell us that for 10 months she's had this pent-up anxiety and crying and not knowing what she was going to do. And then to have this brigade of youth with all this energy and enthusiasm going there and fixing her roof. She said her faith has been restored. And to all of the CUNY students and SUNY students, we say thank you. And we know that that this is more than just bricks and mortars. It's about a civic lesson that they're learning. They're learning lessons about basic human decency. And we need all, whether you're Puerto Rican or not, to continue to not only have your thoughts and prayers, but to go out there if you can. There are many folks who have been reaching out to our office about how to volunteer, and I know that the CUNY, SUNY portion may come to an end, and hopefully it'll be expanded, but for individuals, please, to the media, let them know that they can go to All Hands and Hearts. They're the ones coordinating volunteers based on their skill set and the times. To the governor, you have once again exemplified a true profile of leadership. I said this before. You have once again, Governor, shown us that it truly matters who's in office. It really does matter. Sometimes, because of commentary and social media, people get turned off by politics and government. I don't want to get too political here. But whether there are lives that are being affected in Puerto Rico, in Buffalo, in the Bronx, in New York City, lives because of speed cameras. What we're seeing here, whether at the federal level or even with the state Senate Republicans, I believe is the ultimate act, the ultimate egregious act of government ineptitude or malpractice by individuals who don't understand that our fundamental role when we get elected is to do what we can and all that we can to provide safety and a better life for as many people as we can. And yet, time and time again, from Washington, D.C., to the Republican side in the Senate, when lives are affected, whether in Puerto Rico or in the streets of the Bronx and other parts of the city, we see government officials turning their back. But we see a beacon of hope in our governor who steps up to the plate. And so as the borough president, I'm so happy and glad that I have been able to experience and witness the different phases of what's happening in Puerto Rico. Phases of collection to sending it off. Then we saw, and we still see, the helping to rebuild the infrastructure and the homes of individuals. We've also made an announcement in Puerto Rico about the economic development aspect, dealing with the agricultural community over there. Here in New York City, we have Fresh Direct in the produce market, buying and purchasing fruits and vegetables from the people in Puerto Rico. And there's this reverse economy going on. They're even receiving our Bronx hot sauce. And then today, to have this announcement that those who have been displaced and the organizations that are helping them are receiving that extra funding, thanks to Governor Cuomo. This is what true government is about. This is why I got into government 23 years ago. And I'm honored and happy, and I made my, as they say in Spanish, my mom and dad and titis and uncles, they quelling. Because of the
I thought that was Italian.
because of the work that we've been able to do out in Puerto Rico. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. Gracias un millón de gracias, gobernador.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to introduce Monsignor Kevin Sullivan, who's been a hero of mine for a long time. I want you to know the Monsignor, even though he's a Monsignor yesterday, he was in Puerto Rico, he's pushing a broom, he was shoveling, you would not have known he was a Monsignor. Today is part of our announcement of $2 million in additional aid to service groups who are going to work with the Puerto Rican families who are here. Those grants will go to New York Disaster Interfaith Services, Union Health, Urban Health, Diaspora X, Ibero-American Action League at Rochester, and Centro Civico. They'll be coordinated by Catholic Charities, and I want to thank the Monsignor very much for his help. Monsignor?
Thank you, and thank you so much for your leadership. As the Assemblyman, the Borough President said, I was proud to be part of the delegation that you led for the past 2 days, and for the compliment the governor paid me, I will tell you he swings a mean sledgehammer, recalling his college work days, and so did a great job there. You know, it is a privilege to be part of this, but it's sad to be part of it because it's so necessary. This was the fourth time I've been to Puerto Rico since the hurricanes last year. I'm going back again next week because, as the governor said, this can't be short term. This is long term. And one of the reasons that is so critical to what has been said is the future of Puerto Rico. One of the reasons we've been down there is because one of our New York Catholic Charities agencies, the New York Foundling, has 42 Head Start centers that are in various communities there. And what Head Start is about the future. It's providing young children with the opportunity to better their lives for years into the future. So while we need to do the immediate repair, relief, recovery in Puerto Rico, we know firsthand, because of the work that the New York Foundling does there, it's got to be about the future. It's got to be about the economic development of there so that the island has a future. So I'm very proud to have been part of that. But because of the incredible bond between New York and the island of Puerto Rico, we also need to realize that there are 11,000 people from Puerto Rico who now are here. Some will go back. We would hope that everybody could go back because it's not good that people are displaced. But what the governor has ensured today by this commitment of additional resources is that while they're here, they're going to get the best, welcome, professional, compassionate care. So I am very proud that we have so many partners in this effort, the community groups that the governor has mentioned, And while we always think about New York City as the place where there is a very heavy Puerto Rican population, I can tell you that within the past few weeks, or the past month or so, in the Hudson Valley, we have helped 16 families that have relocated there out of our Catholic Charities Brewster office to find jobs, to find places to live. And because of our partnership with our National Catholic Charities, we were even able to find some funds to get them furniture. So while this is a New York City issue, it is an urban issue, it is throughout New York State. And Catholic Charities, again, is just very proud to partner with New York State, partner with our other organizations who have been mentioned. I would be remiss if I didn't point out the great partnership we have with the Hispanic Federation that has done so much good work in this. And so at this point, I would just be very, very pleased to kind of introduce Hilda Rosario Escher, who is our partner up in Rochester of the Ibero-American Action League.
Thank you, Monsignor, and thank you, Governor Cuomo, for inviting me to be here. It is a pleasure for me to be here on behalf of the Ibero-American Action League. And as someone who has made it their life work to assist fellows Puerto Ricans in need, it is an honor to be part of today's announcement. From day one, Governor Cuomo has pledged to help the island rebuild in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. But I have to tell you, the governor has been there even from before Maria. I had the opportunity to be in Puerto Rico, and the governor was there when they started talking about the economic and the healthcare crisis. And at that point was when the governor won my loyalty. There was a healthcare march. It was 95 degrees. And any politician out there will be just shaking hands and then go back to the hotel. The governor was the first one in that march. And it was unbelievable because, I mean, he was sweating. And I know, one thing that I know about the governor, he doesn't like heat. He doesn't like to be hot.
It was hot that day.
Yes,
I
it
remember.
was very, very hot. So, so he has been there with Puerto Rico right from the beginning, with every problems that the island has faced. The governor's New York stance with Puerto Rico Recovery and Rebuilding Initiative has been a driving force in the island's works to get back on its feet. It is incredible that students, laborers, community leaders, and elected officials from across the state have joined together to get their hands dirty for such an amazing cause. And I can tell you, as a leader myself, I don't ask people to do something that I'm not allowed, that I don't want to do myself. And the governor has proven. I mean, he was in Puerto Rico and he was out there. He wasn't shaking hands, you know, he was out there working just like all the people that went to Puerto Rico. On the heel of his trip to help those who remain on the island, the governor is also standing once again for those who have been displaced. I am so thankful that New York has recognized the needs of the Puerto Ricans who now call New York its home. And I am grateful for the opportunity to be part of the ongoing efforts to help the island its greatest time of need. I can tell you that in Rochester, I have been working since November. I started a center, a welcoming center, and we have received over 3,300 Puerto Ricans. So this help comes at a great time, so thank you very much. We are more committed than ever to continue to help the governor with all of his initiatives. I look forward that to all that we can do together to bring hope to the people of Puerto Rico and to the people here, because I tell you, every Thursday I take my CEO hat off and I put my social work hat on. And you cannot believe the trauma that these families have gone through. It is beyond what you can think. And I'll give you an example. I had this lady come to me, and she was telling me that her mom died during the hurricane, and she had to sleep next to her dead mom for 3 days. And then when she called emergency, they told her to bury her in the backyard. I myself went to Puerto Rico, and I came back, and I had PTSD. I remember being in this one of the offices of one of the commissioners, and he asked me, how was my trip to Puerto Rico? I just burst into tears, and I don't think that he likes to see women cry. So he said, "Oh no, don't tell me anything else." So he said, "But what can the governor do?" And I said, if you can please tell him to continue helping and supporting the governor of Puerto Rico and all the families of Puerto Rico, because the governor is pretty young and he has no expertise. Well, he has the expertise. So once again, Governor, I want to thank you for truly caring for the families that are in Puerto Rico and the families that have joined us in the state of New York. We continue to receive Puerto Ricans every Thursday because we are open every Thursday. So thank you very much for truly caring.
Thank you.
You are my Chinese star.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the kindness. I'd also like to thank Robert Mexico, who's the budget director. He's also Puerto Rican descent, and he's been managing this entire effort, and he's done a fantastic job. Questions?
Governor, speaking of this, it seems like it's increasingly unlikely that Republicans are going to go up and pass this bill before the expiration. What comes next? I mean, is there anything you could do, either by executive order or just in the chamber, to keep them on?
First, Zach, just, we have to have clarity about the situation because this is a very serious issue, and the game playing and the finger pointing has to stop, right? The Republican senators are yelling at the person in the mirror. It is them. This is like me saying, I call on Governor Cuomo to sign the bill as soon as it's passed. Okay. I am Governor Cuomo, right? Call on myself. The Senate Republicans do not want to pass the bill. They don't want to say that, but they don't want to pass the bill. A situation like this, accountability, responsibility is important. Go pass the bill. Well, the assembly, well, the governor, well, the mayor. It's nobody else. It's the person in the mirror. Go sign the bill. The law, the cameras were established by state law. We want the state law to renew, otherwise the cameras expire.
Do you know why the Senate Republicans are opposed to this? Is it the PBA's opposition that you think is part of it?
I don't want to speculate. What they have said to me is they are not popular by and large, because drivers don't like them because they can get speeding tickets. That is the only rationale that I have heard, which, by the way, is an absurd, bizarre rationale. By that rationale, you should have no speed limits. No speed limits. No speed limit on the highway. No speed limit anywhere. Because they curb a driver's desire to drive fast, and because they could get a speeding ticket. So then you should just do away with speed limits, right?
And what about the PBA?
I don't know their position.
Senator Crespo, you voted against same-sex marriage in 2011, which is the signature accomplishment of the governor's campaign. I was wondering if you could explain that vote. Would you take the same vote today?
You could thank leaders like Governor Cuomo and others who have always had this conversation with me, and the answer to that is I would have taken a very different vote today.
Your views changed, evolved on the issue, or changed?
They have.
Aside from state law, though, is there anything by executive order that you could do on this matter?
That is something that we are looking at, but the simplest way to do this, cleanest way to do this is a state law. If there's any possible way I could make a difference, I would. But the simplest and the simplest way is to pass the law, and I still haven't heard a reason why not renew the law. I mean, that's what's so incredibly frustrating here. They won't take accountability. They won't take responsibility. They won't say they're opposed, and they won't say why they're opposed. I call on Governor Cuomo to sign the bill. It's Governor Cuomo's fault. You know, I am Governor Cuomo. It's their vote.
I know you had a statement, just your remarks on Pablo Villavicencio being released.
Yay for small victories. Yay for small victories. And with the ugliness that is out there now, and the president on a crusade against new immigrants, and by the way, I agree with Assemblyman Crespo. I wouldn't be surprised that the disregard for Puerto Rico was because there is a certain amount of discrimination against Puerto Ricans. But we got very involved with that case. This is the so-called pizza delivery man case, which in many ways was just a metaphor for the obnoxious behavior of ICE and the ruthlessness of this president and his instrumentality, ICE. But I think the judge did the right thing.
So loaded today, so the subway is still in a state of emergency a year later. How long should riders expect this to last?
The state of emergency allows us to expedite contracts and the bureaucracy. That's the point of the state of emergency. It's more an administrative device than an actuality, if you will. We have a subway action plan that we put in place, $800 million to stop any further deterioration, stabilize the system, and start to make repairs. By all accounts, it is having a positive effect. The subway action plan, there was a story in the Times the other day that left out a very important fact. Subway action plan required 50% funding from the state, 50% funding from the city. The city never funded the 50%. So there was almost a one-year delay in the implementation of the subway action plan, which I think was reprehensible. And the city funding was only put in place by an act of the legislature this year. So the full subway action plan wasn't implemented. Only half of it was funded by the state until we forced the city to fund the other half. But that is now in place, and we have a permanent plan that has been proposed called the Fast Forward Plan, which will be the long-term capital repairs. And that's going to be a question of funding also. The question of the subways is very simple. The system has not been maintained because nobody wanted to pay for the maintenance of the system. Increase fares, no, we don't want to do that. City and state pay more, no, we don't want to do that. And you've seen a deterioration of the system. It's the old commercial, you can pay me now, you can pay me later. It's before most of your time. You can either pay for maintenance and repair, or you can pay a lot more later. Well, we didn't pay for maintenance and repair and updates, and now we have a serious situation requiring significant investment to bring the system up to speed. I think it is long overdue, but it is a smart investment. The subway is the economic lifeblood of the city. Make the investment. And you want to reduce congestion in the city, you need to make mass transit work. And to make mass transit work, you need to invest in the subway system. So we keep coming full circle.
Last question, guys.
I wanted to ask you
I'm
about
supposed
the idea that driver safety has been compromised by your decision to install blue lane dividers in the East River tunnels to match the state's official colors. Because the Federal Highway Administration says that that violates regulations and that it should be orange.
I think I missed the thrust of that question.
The East River Tunnel. they
In the
have-
rubber tunnels?
Yes, they're near coaster cores on it. They've been painted blue, but they should be orange. And that.
I think you should talk to the MTA about that question.
They said that the Federal Highway Administration says that is, the color is compromising driver safety.
All right, I would refer you to the MTA with that question. Delineators are not my area of proficiency. Please, Brian. No, one more.
Governor, I'm just wondering whether you've heard this latest tape in regard to the discussion between Mr. Trump and his ex-lawyer. And as a lawyer, what do you think of the fact that it was taped by the lawyer? Is there any breach of ethics there? And number two, what does it say about the president?
Well, first, in that question is a trick question. Did you hear the tape of the conversation? The tape was aired last night on a TV show held by Chris Cuomo. So, if I say I did not hear it, it means I did not listen to my brother's show, which would cause familial issues. So the first answer is yes, I heard the tape. And that is the most important part of that answer. I think, look, as an attorney, I don't know where the crime is on the face, or if there is a crime on the face of the facts. There could be more to the situation, but I don't know that it's a crime. It is shocking to me that an attorney would tape his client. It is shocking to me that the president waived the attorney-client privilege and allowed the tape to be aired. They think it's exculpatory. I didn't hear anything exculpatory on that tape. And I think it is just one of the more graphic, damning personal comments on the president, his conduct, and the way he did business. I think if I were reading the legal tea leaves, having Michael Cohen, an active opponent now of the president, which is what I heard his counsel Lanny Davis to be saying, he could be a potentially very damaging witness against the president if it ever came to that. I do think the host of the show did a marvelous job. Thank you guys very much.